Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Come on in here. We're going to talk about something in this book, something in this article here that's very, very powerful, a little bit of memory news, and something from Evolving Beyond Thought. And we're just gunning up here to start a free training webinar as well. So go to magneticmemorymet.com/deep and register for that. It's in about an hour, but I was doing my coffee here in the morning, and I thought I would just share the memory improvement news, really, and the good news about memory improvement. If you're here, hit the thumbs up, let me know where you are in the world, and we'll get to this in just a second. But first, let me wet my mouth a little bit here. Check out this Waking Up podcast. Cup, isn't that nice? I don't know, do you listen to the Waking Up podcast? Let me know. I think it's one of the most important ones that we got out there. And when you like stuff, it's important to support it. So there we go. Let's start here with this Herding Tigers. It's really kind of a cool book, and it has a really important piece of wisdom in it for you, which basically says if you've not changed your mind about something in the past few years, you may be less intellectually honest or lacking in curiosity. So I think that that's pretty important. And I know a lot of people have convinced themselves that they are not, they're not really capable of doing memory techniques and so forth. And of course, that's problematic because you've got to change your mind about that. Anyway, we're doing a free webinar real soon. This is a quick live. Go to magneticmerrymethod.com/deep. And it's going to be some super intense training, but you're going to need to be registered. The link should be in the description below. It's magneticmerrymethod.com/deep. And I was thinking about you all while I was preparing my coffee and reading this article here. I'm just going to read this one part because it's really, really important and empowering. And it's the nature of memory training, really. Emerson's asked, will there be a replay for the webinar? It conflicts with my nighttime routine. I'll have to be up early for work. There actually isn't going to be one. However, you're going to have access to it through the mastermind. So this is a very exclusive and restricted one, but you won't miss out because you are in the mastermind. So thanks for saying hello. And if you are here and you haven't registered, go to magneticmerrymethod.com/deep, or you should be able to click the link below. Anyway, one of the things that's so amazing here is that we are going to dive deep into some training. But one of the things that's so important is that the answers are actually in your own journey. And so this is a magazine about magic and whatnot. It's called Genie Magazine. I guess some people probably call it Genie Magazine. And so it's got a lot of stuff that really makes most sense to magicians, I guess. But John Rackerbauer has a column all the time where he talks about books. He's mentioning Tribe of Mentors from Tim Ferriss and other stuff. But he starts off saying, it's been said that the best teachers are those who tell you where to look, but don't tell you what to see. Many of my magic teachers were like that. They often gave me hints where to look for certain tricks. However, their hints were purposely vague. And he says, Marlowe, for example, wanted his students to earn the privilege of knowing a method. Therefore, the only clue he usually provided was to say, it's in print. Go look for it. Go hunt for it. So since the method has been publicized and isn't stashed away in inaccessible private notes, go find it again and do the grunt work. Yes, this postpones gratification, but it forces you to learn the rigors of research, and this is what I pass this lesson along to fellow aspirants. And anyway, he goes on to talk about magic-related stuff. But the point is that that's what teaching is, right? It's telling you, it's telling you where to look, essentially, but not what to see at what you look at. And memory training is in many ways what that is. And so back to Herding Tigers here. If you've not changed your mind about something in the past few years, you may be less intellectually honest or lacking in curiosity. And that's like a kind of a tough pill to swallow, but in some sense, if you bring these two sort of things together, there's a lot of teaching out there that people don't apply because they're not understanding what teaching really is. And what teaching really is directing you to look at certain things, but not necessarily telling you what to look at when you look at those things. That said, on this, we're going to look at some memory palaces. We're going to look at some people ask me to see my magnetic images a lot, so we're going to look at some, but you got to be registered, and that's at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. So I'm going to tell you what to look at, but I'm going to tell you that you're going to learn by actually doing what's suggested there. And so you want to wake up to memory techniques, you learn by doing them. And so that's really the point of what I wanted to share there. And I may refer to this again because it's really, really brilliant and really important. And this Herding Tigers book, I don't know what you think, but it's really beautiful. I think it's just a memorable cover, memorable title. I'm always interested in memorable things. In any case, if you're just hopping on now or just having a short one here, let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. I'm working on my own memory project now. Gary Weber in the new Evolving Beyond Thought, really great book, includes the Ribhu Gita, and so I'm starting to memorize it, and it's a nice challenge. And what's really cool is he has a video where he chants it himself, and it's interesting because you have a number of challenges all at the same time. It's the Sanskrit, then it's the meaning of the Sanskrit, and then being able to meditate on those things and let the meditation itself do the work without necessarily trying to make it do anything, but just showing up to the work. So that's that. The last thing I was going to point out is just some newspaper stuff. Bill Shakespeare was here. Anyway, I haven't read many Australian newspapers, but starting to look at it a little bit more just to see what's going on. And it seems there's a bit of a kerfuffle because they're now teaching graffiti in school. And, there's an issue there. Is graffiti an art form or a criminal offense? Is it a crime? It brings to mind a great novel by Don DeLillo called Underworld, where graffiti art is quite central to the story. And that's a very spatial novel. It involves a lot of buildings that if you're really into memory techniques and the memory palace technique and so forth, you might want to read Underworld. It's really interesting on that level. But what do you think? Is graffiti a crime or a form of expression? I've often felt that some of the advertising on billboards and bus stops and on the sides of buses themselves is so damn ugly that that should be a crime. I mean, yeah, they're paying for the right to have it there, but really? In any case. But one of the key points here, though, the graffiti issue aside, I don't think anybody's going to solve that, but one of the points here is that if you're not capable of reading novels, poetry, and plays, you'll never have a firm grasp of language. And that's a really interesting point. But I would push it even further, right? Like, why read Shakespeare? Why read Shakespeare in the original English instead of No Fear Shakespeare, right? Like, No Fear Shakespeare, yeah, you might get the story, you might learn from the story, but you won't learn from the language itself, what the language does for your critical thinking. But this person's right. If you're not capable of reading novels, poetry, and plays, you'll never have a firm grasp of language. But I'd go further. The law is written in language. And if you don't know how to think in language, and you don't know how to write in language, then you can't participate in the laws that govern you. You can't even understand them. So I would push that further. Great point, but let's go a step further. Really important. If you're just joining us live, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, and go to magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. Duchi's here and asked, are there any more memory techniques other than the memory palace? Yes, there are, and we're going to be talking about that on a live webinar in about an hour from now. So get registered, no replay, and pictures up on the screen of memory palaces and mnemonic examples and so forth. This is just a little last invitation to see if you all want to come. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/deep, and we'll talk about that, because there are many more memory techniques other than the memory palace. There's a reason why you want the memory palace, though, as a foundational technique, so I highly recommend that you do get it. It'll help you wake up to the biggest power of your memory. The biggest power. Anyway, the other thing in the news here is change. The change that's happening to language and concerns about it, and the de-skilling of what we're doing, and how people are really not able to even express themselves properly. And every person is equal in some sense in terms of their vast intelligence that's inside of them, because we all have being inside of ourselves, so to speak. I'm not sure how to word that properly, but we have the yearning and the longing to communicate with being itself, other people who are in being with us. And because language is one of the ways that we do it and we connect, when people have a world where language is being dumbed down, they can't understand what they're reading, and then they can't mentally process it because they're not even remembering it. This is a really dangerous situation, because it's alienating to people, and they don't ever get to feel their full power that they have inside of them. It just needs to have expression through language. So reading is really important, but remembering what you read and being able to process it, and then processing it in particular ways that we're going to talk about on this webinar at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. So make sure you're registered if you're free in an hour from now, a little less than an hour from now. And the other thing that I'll mention here is that this writer mentions Weird Al Yankovic's Word Crimes, and I highly recommend that you check that out, because it's really funny, and it really highlights the issues of what happens when people aren't using language properly and correctly. So that was it. Just for those of you who may not have been here, I'm just going to repeat this from oh, Bad Boss here. Thank you for being here. If you haven't got the link, join us on the webinar, please, if you have time in an hour. magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. And you know, it's just always great to see you all. Oh, Emerson says, I'm building a stress palace, a place to go immediately when someone makes me angry. Yeah, that's a good technique. I've worked with that myself a little bit, and it's good. It's good. One of the cool things, and one of the reasons why the Memory Palace is so precious to me, is that it changes your relationship to space altogether, and you begin to realize that you're psychologically wired with many, many spaces. Jack, how are you doing? Good to see you. Come and join us on the webinar starting in about an hour at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep, and you'll be able to register. I've got a lot of questions too that have come in. We'll be going through them. Good to see you always. But yeah, having a memory palace for de-stressing is really good, but also then when you develop your spatial memory in this way, then you begin to feel much more connected with space. It's like your nervous system wires more with the external world, and you have a certain oneness, which, you know, circles back to evolving beyond thought, where one of the things that Gary Weber talks about is training your brain by inserting some new software, some software that's better and defrags the system, so to speak. And so, you know, you really got to get this. It's so brilliant. And check out Gary Weber's blog and videos and stuff. I've linked to them before. And you know, I was really skeptical of it, to tell you the truth. But it has to do with language, the power of what language can do to help you connect to ideas in different ways. And there's some interesting arguments about how the Sanskrit, when it touches certain parts of the mouth, maybe activates brain centers and so forth. But in any case, the first one, are my thoughts useful, how do they behave? You learn to say it in Sanskrit, but isn't that a great thing to think about? Like, are my thoughts useful? How do they behave? And if you did that in Emerson's in a memory palace, that could be a useful meditation. There's another one, why is this concept so overwhelming? I really like that one, especially for learners who are struggling to learn something. If you can just pause and ask, like gets into Richard Feynman technique, you know? Why is this so overwhelming? What can I do to solve this problem? To solve this overwhelm? Just face it the way that it is. Really empowering stuff. So, but I think John Rackerboimer, I guess if you pronounce it German, he really gets into something that I think ultimately is what this kind of mental training leads to, which is that the best teachers are those who tell you where to look, but don't tell you what to see. And the thing is that no one could even tell you what to see anyway, because they don't have your eyes. They don't have your brain, which is why doing is where all the real learning happens. It happens in your journey when you're open to journeying, which, okay, let's repeat ourselves, is why I jumped on this quote. Doing is how you learn, and if you've not changed your mind about something in the past few years, you may be less intellectually honest or lacking in curiosity. That's like the most powerful thing in this whole book so far. And it's true. It's true that everybody, each and every one of us, we have this thing where we're holding back and we're not changing our mind about certain things. So I often say that skepticism is the most important tool so long as you actually practice skepticism. So I was quite skeptical that learning to chant Sanskrit was going to have an extra beneficial effect. But because I'm a scientific skepticist, I test my assumptions and I change, and I feel actually that there is a benefit, and it's one that no teacher could ever convince me of unless I took the steps myself. So if you're interested in making more steps, meaningful steps with your memory, magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. If you happen to be watching the replay of this and you're not watching it now, because this webinar will be taking place in real time and there'll be no replay unless you're in the mastermind, where you'll get a copy of the replay, then this link will eventually be redirected to another place where you'll certainly have something to also learn from, if you're so inclined, to expand the assumptions that you may have about your memory right now and work with it a little bit. I like to maybe not use the word work, maybe use the word play, and just dive in, join in, and enjoy. And if you've got coffee with you, a copy of this coffee with you, then let's sip together. I always enjoy sometimes this one guy who does live sessions, and he says, come on in here, guys, time for the simultaneous sip. I don't want to steal his stuff, but I like it. It's a cool thing that he does. Jack is registered. Okay, great. If you're here and you're free in about an hour from now, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/deep and join us. And again, if you're watching the replay and that link, well, click it anyway. It'll take you to somewhere good, and you'll be able to get some training. So Ducci asks, is it possible to remember forever? Well, I mean, I'm skeptical that it is possible to remember forever, but let's put some definitions around what forever means, and then what is it that we're trying to remember forever? Often the answer to your question is in the question, or the question is begging further questions for clarification. So when we throw around words like forever, what does that mean? What does it mean? It's really important to get clear about our meanings. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say this morning. I wanted to invite you, last chance to join this. I'm going to send an email out about that as well. And really great meeting with you this morning. If you have any further thoughts or things you want to say or questions, leave them down in the discussion below if you're watching the replay. Highly recommend Evolving Beyond Thought. Highly recommend that if you are any sort of team leader who has people who help you and you need more creativity, this has some good stuff. It's called Herding Tigers. And if you're a magician, well, you probably already get this magazine, so don't forget this column. It's actually probably the best column in in Genie magazine. So once again, magneticmemorymethod.com/deep. Thanks for being here, everybody, this morning. It's really always a pleasure to meet with you. And no matter what you do, think about what you can do to improve your memory today, and then take action on it, because you will learn so much just from doing. Really a pleasure. Thanks again for being here. Until we speak again, come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com/deep and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.